20 minutes later, Karen sat dripping on her Italian leather sofa, wrapped in a towel that was probably worth more than most people's monthly car payments. The fire department had extracted her from the pond with embarrassing efficiency, complete with a small crowd of onlookers who treated the whole affair like free entertainment. "Mrs. Whitmore," said Fire Chief Rodriguez, standing awkwardly in her pristine living room, "you're lucky that pond isn't deeper. But I have to ask, how did you not see the construction barriers?" Karen's jaw tightened. The barriers were inadequate. I was focused on getting to the emergency HOA meeting about the Hendersons' unauthorized garden gnomes. "This neighborhood has standards, Chief Rodriguez." "The garden gnomes," he repeated slowly. "Right." After the fire department left, Karen paced her house like a caged leopard. Her phone was dead, her car was being towed, and worse, she was trending on the neighborhood app. The posts were brutal. "HOA Karen takes a dive. #PondLife. When you hate the pond so much you try to become one with it." Plot twist. The pond was defending itself. Her doorbell rang. Through the peephole she saw Tom Henderson, the gnome offender himself, standing on her porch with a concerned expression. "Karen, I heard what happened. Are you okay?" She opened the door, chin raised defiantly. "I'm perfectly fine, Tom. Though I notice you're not at the emergency meeting I called about your property violations." Tom's eyebrows shot up. "You mean the meeting you called for 30 minutes ago? While you were in the pond?" "The timing was unfortunate," Karen admitted stiffly, "but the issues remain. Your garden gnomes violate Section 4.2 of the HOA covenant regarding lawn ornamentation." "Karen," Tom said gently, "I brought you soup. My wife made it when she heard about your accident." For a moment, Karen's armor cracked. She looked at the thermos in Tom's hands, at his genuinely worried expression, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years: uncertainty. "I don't need soup," she said, but her voice lacked its usual authority. "Everyone needs soup sometimes," Tom replied. "Even HOA presidents." That evening, Karen sat in her study, staring at her wall of framed certificates and commendations. Neighborhood Watch Coordinator of the Year. Outstanding community service. Dedicated HOA leadership. But all she could think about was the sound of her neighbors laughing as pond water dripped from her car. She picked up her laptop and began typing an email to the HOA board, her fingers hovering over the keys. She could spin this, make it about safety violations, inadequate signage, negligent construction practices. She could turn herself from the punchline into the victim. But as she started to type, she remembered Tom's worried face, Mrs. Patterson's barely contained laughter, the teenager's live stream commentary. Even Karen needs a cooling-off period sometimes. Maybe they were right, maybe she did. But admitting that would mean admitting she'd been wrong about more than just the pond. Karen Whitmore's white BMW sedan emerged from Willowbrook Estates' ornamental pond like a mechanical whale breaching the surface, pond scum dripping from its chrome grille, and her "Ahoy Bo President" bumper sticker barely visible beneath the green slime. Water cascaded from the open driver's window as she sat there, engine sputtering, designer glasses askew, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair now resembling a wet poodle. "I told you the construction crew moved the barrier," shouted Mike Chen from the sidewalk, his orange safety vest bright against the morning sun. "But you just kept yelling about permits and drove right through." Karen's face flushed crimson as she realized half the neighborhood had emerged from their houses to witness her aquatic debut. Mrs. Patterson from 42 Maple was recording everything on her phone, barely containing her laughter. The Johnsons' teenage twins were live-streaming from their doorstep, their commentary peppered with barely stifled giggles. "This is temporary construction," Karen sputtered, pond water dripping from her chin. "Where are the proper warning signs? The advance notifications? The HOA wasn't consulted about this. This hazard." Mike rolled his eyes. "Ma'am, we put up orange cones, caution tape, and I literally stood here waving my arms and shouting at you to stop. You told me to mind my own business and learn about property values." The irony wasn't lost on Karen that she'd spent the last 6 months fighting to have the pond filled in, claiming it was a liability and eyesore. Now she was sitting in it, her car's hazard lights blinking pathetically beneath 2 feet of murky water. "Someone's going to pay for this," she muttered, fumbling for her phone. The screen was black, water dripping from its charging port. "My phone? It's ruined. Need help getting out?" Mike offered, extending his hand. Karen glared at him with the intensity of a woman who just discovered someone had planted dandelions in her front yard. "I don't need help from someone who clearly doesn't understand safety protocols." She attempted to open her door, but the water pressure made it impossible. The engine finally died with a pitiful wheeze, leaving only the gentle lapping of pond water against her windows and the distant sound of her neighbors' increasingly creative commentary. "This is fine," she announced to no one in particular, though her voice cracked slightly. "This is absolutely fine." But as she sat there, watching a family of ducks paddle curiously around her submerged hood ornament, Karen Whitmore realized that for the first time in her 5-year tenure as HOA president, she might not be in control of the situation. The question was, would she learn from it, or would she find a way to make everyone else pay for her mistake? Karen spent the next morning at the local coffee shop, her usual BMW replaced by a rental car that she was convinced made her look like someone who shopped at discount stores. She'd come here to gather intelligence, or as she preferred to think of it, conduct a thorough investigation into the security failures that had led to her incident. "The usual, Mrs. Whitmore?" asked Jenny, the barista, barely suppressing a grin. "Just coffee. Black." Karen had given up her complicated oat milk cortado order after overhearing 2 customers yesterday discussing HOA Karen's fancy coffee demands. She settled into a corner booth with her laptop, determined to build a case against the construction company. But every few minutes, she caught people glancing at her, whispering, some even taking not-so-subtle photos. "Excuse me," said a woman Karen recognized from Oakwood Circle. "Are you okay? I saw the video." "There's a video?" Karen's blood pressure spiked. "Oh, honey, there are several videos. My daughter showed me one with over 50,000 views. You've got quite the fan following." Karen's hands shook as she opened her laptop. The first search result made her stomach drop. HOA Karen's pond plunge goes viral. I Am the Manager remix. The video had been set to music, auto-tuned clips of her voice saying, "This is fine, and someone's going to pay for this" played over footage of her car emerging from the pond like a confused submarine. But the comment section was what really got to her. Mixed in with the jokes and memes were genuine concerns. "My HOA president is just as crazy. These people have too much power. Why are we laughing? This woman clearly needs help. HOA boards are full of people who peaked in high school." Karen slammed the laptop shut. She needed to do something, anything, to regain control of the narrative. She drove to the construction site, where Mike Chen was directing a crew installing proper drainage around the pond. "Mr. Chen," she called out, marching across the grass in her impractical heels, "I need to speak with you about safety protocols." Mike looked up from his clipboard, his expression neutral. "Mrs. Whitmore, how can I help you? I want to know why there weren't proper barriers. Why my insurance company is calling this an at-fault accident when clearly your signage was inadequate." Mike set down his clipboard. "Ma'am, I have photos of the barriers we installed. Orange cones, caution tape, warning signs. I also have video footage of you driving around the barriers and through the tape." Video footage. Karen's voice cracked. Security camera on the Miller house caught the whole thing. "You want to see it?" Karen watched in horror as the footage played on Mike's tablet. There she was, clearly visible, stopping at the barriers, rolling down her window to yell at Mike, then deliberately driving around the obstacles while he frantically waved his arms. "Oh," she whispered. "Yeah, oh." Mike's voice was surprisingly gentle. "Look, Mrs. Whitmore, I get it. We all have bad days. But you can't blame everyone else for your mistakes." Karen stared at the tablet screen, watching herself make the decision that had led to her humiliation. For the first time in years, she couldn't think of anyone else to blame. I should go," she mumbled. "Mrs. Whitmore," Mike called as she walked away. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you're okay. And that pond needed a good stirring up anyway. Despite everything, Karen almost smiled. Karen woke up the next morning with a decision that surprised even her. Instead of preparing for battle, she found herself walking to Tom Henderson's house, carrying a plate of store-bought cookies and what felt like the weight of 5 years' worth of mistakes. Tom answered the door in his gardening clothes, soil under his fingernails, a small garden gnome tucked under his arm. "Karen, everything okay?" "I came to apologize," she said, the words feeling foreign in her mouth. "About the gnomes, about everything." Tom's surprise was evident. "Would you like to come in?" "Actually," Karen looked at the gnome in his hands. "Could you show me your garden? I realize I've never actually seen it." Tom's backyard was a revelation. What Karen had dismissed as unauthorized landscaping was actually a thoughtful, beautiful space. The garden gnomes weren't randomly placed. They were part of a whimsical fairy garden that his granddaughter had helped design during her visits. "She's 7, Tom explained, pointing to a tiny gnome fishing in a miniature pond. "She calls this one Grandpa Gnome because he has the same fishing hat as me." Karen knelt down, studying the intricate setup. "It's lovely. I had no idea." "Karen, can I ask you something? What made you so angry about everything? You weren't always like this." Karen sat on Tom's garden bench, surrounded by the unauthorized beauty she tried so hard to eliminate. "I think I forgot the difference between caring about something and controlling it. After my divorce, this place became everything to me. Keeping it perfect felt like keeping myself together. And now I'm sitting in a pond, metaphorically speaking." Karen managed a weak smile. "Tom, I'm resigning from the HOA board today. But before I do, I want to make something right." That afternoon, Karen stood before the packed community center meeting room. Every seat was filled, and she could see phones ready to record her next viral moment. But instead of the defensive speech she'd planned, she found herself being honest. "I owe you all an apology," she began. "I became so focused on protecting property values that I forgot about the value of being neighborly. I turned rules into weapons and community guidelines into personal vendettas." The room was silent, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "I'm resigning as HOA president, effective immediately. But I'm not leaving the neighborhood. I'm staying, and I'm going to try to learn how to be a neighbor instead of a dictator." She paused, looking directly at Tom Henderson. "And I'm personally funding a community garden project. Anyone interested in helping design it? Gnomes welcome." The applause was tentative at first, then genuine. As Karen packed up her HOA materials, Patricia Vance approached her. "That was brave, Karen. Really brave." "It was overdue," Karen replied. "Patricia, I have one last request as outgoing president." "What's that?" "That pond I drove into. I want to donate funds to make it a proper community feature. Maybe add some benches, some walking paths. Turn my embarrassment into something the neighborhood can actually enjoy." Patricia smiled. "I think that's a wonderful idea." 6 months later, Karen sat on one of the new benches by the pond, watching the ducks paddle around the small fountain that had been installed where her car had made its dramatic entrance. Her phone buzzed with a text from her granddaughter. "Grandma, I saw the video of you in the pond. You looked like a mermaid." Karen laughed, typing back, "More like a very confused seal, sweetheart." The pond had become a neighborhood gathering spot, complete with a small plaque that read, "Whitmore Memorial Pond. Sometimes the best discoveries come from taking an unexpected plunge." As the sun set, Karen spotted a familiar figure approaching, Mike Chen, now finishing up the final touches on the pond's landscaping. "Mrs. Whitmore, what do you think?" "It's perfect, Mike, and please call me Karen." "Karen it is." Mike grinned. "You know, I never did thank you properly." "Thank me? For what?" "For driving into the pond. Made my job a lot more interesting. Plus, this turned out to be one of our best projects." Karen laughed, a sound that had become more frequent in recent months. "Well, I'm glad my public humiliation could contribute to community beautification." As Mike walked away, Karen noticed something new by the pond's edge, a small garden gnome, wearing a tiny HOA president badge. sitting peacefully among the water lilies. She shook her head, smiling. Some mysteries were better left unsolved. But as she headed home, Karen couldn't help wondering. In a neighborhood full of people she was still learning to understand, what other surprises awaited her? The answer, she suspected, would be worth discovering, even if it meant occasionally getting in over her head. The emergency AHOA board meeting was held in Karen's living room, which she'd selected specifically because it gave her the psychological advantage of home turf. What she hadn't anticipated was how the other board members would look at her, like she was a ticking time bomb they were afraid to defuse. So, said Patricia Vance, the board secretary, consulting her tablet, we have several items to discuss. The pond incident, the viral videos, and approximately 47 formal complaints filed against you in the past week. 47. Karen's voice pitched higher than she intended. About what? Well, Patricia scrolled through her notes. Harassment, abuse of authority, excessive fines, intimidation tactics, and my personal favorite, creating a hostile living environment through tyrannical enforcement of arbitrary rules. Board member David Walsh cleared his throat. Karen, we've been friends for years, but this has gone too far. The Johnson family is talking about moving. The Hendersons are considering legal action, and frankly, the whole neighborhood is in revolt. I've been protecting property values. Karen stood up, pacing to her mantel where her HOA awards gleamed. Someone has to maintain standards. Standards? Patricia's laugh was bitter. Karen, you fined the Patels $200 because their Christmas lights were excessively festive. You tried to ban the community book club because they met in the park without a permit. You made the elderly couple on Elm Street remove their bird feeder because it wasn't aesthetically consistent. Those were legitimate violations. You threatened to sue an 8-year-old for selling lemonade without a business license. Karen felt cornered. I was teaching her about proper procedures. Karen, David said softly, do you hear yourself? Do you remember why we all moved to this neighborhood? It was supposed to be a community, not a prison. The room fell silent. Karen looked around at the faces of people she'd considered allies, now seeing them as if for the first time. Patricia looked exhausted. David seemed genuinely sad. Even mild-mannered Treasurer Bob Martinez was shaking his head in disappointment. I've kept this neighborhood pristine, Karen whispered. I've protected everyone's investment. At what cost? Patricia asked. Karen, when was the last time you had a conversation with a neighbor that didn't involve rules or violations? When did you last enjoy living here? Karen opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. She couldn't remember the last time she talked to someone without looking for something to criticize or correct. We're calling for a vote of no confidence, David announced. Karen, you can resign voluntarily, or we can remove you. But this has to end. You can't do this to me, Karen said, but her voice lacked conviction. I am the HOA president. I know these covenants better than anyone. I've dedicated my life to this community. And that's exactly the problem. Patricia said gently, you've forgotten how to live your own life. Karen sank onto her sofa, surrounded by the awards and certificates that had once defined her identity. For the first time in 5 years, she was faced with the possibility of being nobody special, just another resident in a neighborhood where she'd made herself the enemy. I need time to think, she said finally. You have until tomorrow, David replied. We'll reconvene then for your decision. After they left, Karen sat alone in her perfect living room, wondering when protecting her world had become destroying it.